Hi, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for being here. My name's Simon Marmura Brown. I am the Strategic Director of Research and Knowledge Mobilization at the Pond-Deshpande Centre at the University of New Brunswick. I know it is a mouthful, and I'm very happy to have you all here and to share with you the Green Horizons project. What I'm going to do is explain what Green Horizons is, where it started, where it went, where we are today, and where it's going. I don't intend on talking for too long because I do want to leave some time at the end for a Q&A. So if you do have questions as I'm speaking, hold them in your head, and there will be time at the end for you to ask them, and I will do my very best to respond. I'm going to apologize. I'm getting over an illness, so I'm a little bit hoarse, and I'm going to try not to cough. I avoided getting sick over the holidays, only to get sick right after the holidays. So such is life, and it seems like that's something that is going around. I think almost everybody here is probably in New Brunswick. I'm in Fredericton, where it is unseasonably warm, which is, I guess, a positive for me today. Okay. Before I begin, I do want to take just a minute to thank our sponsors. Our two sponsors for the Green Horizons project are the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, or ACOA, and Opportunities New Brunswick, ONB. Without their support, this project wouldn't be possible, and we're very grateful for the support that they've shown us. Okay, we can move to the next slide. The first thing I wanted to share with you all or explain is just what Green Horizons is and why the project exists, because it has changed over time. Green Horizons was launched all the way back in spring 2024 when the world was very different. Um, Green Horizons came out of a real desire to ensure that small and medium-sized enterprises in New Brunswick, or SMEs, I'm going to say SMEs a lot, to ensure that SMEs were able to implement more sustainable business practices in order to remain competitive in a global economy that was increasingly moving towards higher sustainability standards for businesses, for reporting, for measuring. It seemed like the winds of change were pushing us towards more sustainable standards, and a lower carbon future. And so Green Horizons was to help ensure that New Brunswick SMEs were able to adapt, compete, and thrive in a global economy that was moving in that direction. Now, of course, this has shifted somewhat. And of course, this project has had to adapt as a result of what we've seen, which is a very different global economy today in the winter of 2026 than it was back in the spring of 2024. Uh, Green Horizons was not just about climate policy, it was also and is also about competitiveness. It's about market access, it's about energy costs, it's about supply chains, and it's about the long-term resilience of New Brunswick SMEs and the New Brunswick economy. Of course, SMEs make up nearly all businesses in New Brunswick, and while most of them are taking some action on sustainability and climate change, many of them lack the time, the capital, the clarity, or the confidence to go further. So, Green Horizons was initiated and designed to help SMEs take action around sustainability, around decarbonization, and ultimately to help New Brunswick and Canada achieve its climate targets. So, the project's purpose, my purpose, is fundamentally to make New Brunswickers' lives better. And that is, or what it is, either by supporting those businesses, those entrepreneurs, those business owners. It was to support them as they adopt more sustainable business practices and become more resilient and competitive. It was about supporting those people and also about helping us meet our climate goals. And that is making New Brunswick a greener, a cleaner, and a more resilient province. We approach the problem in a number of different ways. And so at the beginning of a project like this, where you're dealing with a very complex challenge, which is how do we ensure that SMEs can remain competitive and can do so by adopting more sustainable business practices. Um, the first sort of phase is scoping and understanding the problem itself. So we call this the discovery phase of the project. And this is where we're working to better understand uh, the problem itself. And to do so, over that year in 2024, we surveyed 400 small and medium-sized enterprises across the province. We held a large stakeholder summit. We conducted interviews and focus groups with businesses and business leaders. And we also worked with and engaged with an advisory council or a leadership council, which spanned government, industry, and academia. And I think actually some or many of you, maybe most of you here, were involved in one or more of those processes. What we learned from this, our approach to the problem, was that small and medium-sized businesses, they want to act, but they face barriers. And those barriers are chiefly cost, but also complexity, uncertainty, and what they perceive to be a fragmented support system or support systems, plural. So rather than designing, one big program, we asked ourselves, how can we implement or create relatively small, targeted interventions to unlock SME confidence, to improve coordination, and to inspire tangible, concrete action? And so this led us to design, based on the survey, the interview data, working with the Leadership Council, working with many of you. This led us to design 7 prototypes. This entire process is all contained in a discovery report, which we recently published, and which I'll have Jasmeet put that in the chat for any of you who haven't had a chance to read that yet. That outlines in great detail this entire process, as well as the survey results, the results from the stakeholder summit, et cetera. So if you're interested in that process, please read it. So where we are today is we have moved from that phase, that discovery phase, to what we're calling, or what we would call, the experimentation phase. So we've collected the data, we've talked to people, we've talked to stakeholders, we've been guided by policymakers, researchers, people with lived experience, businesses, and then we've designed targeted interventions to address the challenges which were surfaced. We developed 7 prototypes, and the way to think about a prototype is not as a finished program or project or pilot or initiative, but to think of it rather as a working experiment that is answering or addressing a specific question about how to help SMEs move maybe faster with more confidence. So I'm going to share those 7 prototypes with you. And just bear in mind that they're designed to be practical, they're designed to be tested quickly, and they're designed to be refined and scaled, as well as to focus on real business needs. I'll run through all 7 of these now. So the first prototype that we designed is called the Lighthouse Series. And this prototype is about visibility and storytelling. I'm from New Brunswick, as I think many folks here are. I grew up here, I live here, and I feel like in this province, we often have this sort of air of defeatism. We hear all the time, we're a have-not province, we're a drive-through province. I really hate this narrative. Um, while there are SMEs who are struggling to implement more sustainable business practices, there are really wonderful examples of businesses doing incredible work across this province that far too often we don't hear about, we don't know about. I think that success in this realm, sustainability, competitiveness, economic success, often that happens in isolation, where other SMEs don't see it, policymakers might not hear about it, and the lessons from SMEs that are really successful in this space, they don't often travel. So I've been working with businesses in northern New Brunswick, for example, just as an example, as an Anglophone New Brunswicker. I'm from Fredericton. I grew up here. I've been working with businesses in northern New Brunswick, Francophone businesses, and they have these just incredible stories that I've never heard, and which I think are really important for people like me to hear. And so the Lighthouse series identifies and showcases SMEs who are already quote unquote, lighting the way to inspire and inform people across the province about the wonderful work that people are already doing. What I am doing is traveling across the province with a camera crew and interviewing those businesses and business leaders or their business teams, highlighting the wonderful work they're doing in order to inspire and inform people across the province, in order to normalize sustainability as a business strategy and a strategy for increased competition, to show people what's practical, what's possible, what's maybe replicable, to show what works. And ultimately, like my ultimate goal here is to inspire optimism because I think especially at this juncture in in the world and in history, we don't have enough optimism, and certainly we don't have enough in New Brunswick. So this is about learning. It's about inspiration. It's about showing what sort of innovations exist and are successful, and hopefully identifying the real potential and opportunity that exists right here in New Brunswick already. The second prototype sort of flows from that kind of spirit. And it's called the Decarbonization Dialogues. This is a series of panel discussions or deliberations or conversations um, around sustainability, around business, around climate change. We want to create more space for honest, cross-sector conversations between business, between policymakers, between researchers, and between the public. Right now, um, and this happens everywhere across this country and beyond, but business, government, funders, researchers, the public often move in silos or in parallel and not always together. And I think this leads to confusion, maybe some hesitancy, maybe that defeatism that I mentioned previously, but certainly missed opportunities. So we've created a series of regional dialogues to bring people into the same room to talk about sustainability, climate change, to align priorities, to surface shared barriers, and to reframe sustainability and decarbonization as not just, I think, a regulatory or a moral obligation, but also as a real economic opportunity. Um, a few of these dates have been solidified. Um, Not all of them have been, so I can't share much. But two of them, one will be in Fredericton, one will be in St. John, and we'll be working in tandem with the University of New Brunswick to deliver those conversations. We're working with some folks up in northern New Brunswick, the Bathurst Chamber of Commerce, for example, to shape a francophone conversation in northern New Brunswick. And then in Moncton at the end of March, we'll be having a final conversation, and that will sort of be the formal close of the Green Horizons project to talk about what worked, what didn't work, and to chart a path forward. So please, follow along on social media or on our website as those dates are released. Depending on where you are in New Brunswick, we would love to see you at one or more of those. And again, information on those will be released in the coming weeks. The third prototype is more so moving away from sort of conversation and knowledge mobilization and deliberation towards more practical supports for businesses. So this is about Bill C-59. Um, and Bill C-59 was introduced in 2024, I believe in the summer, and it changes the rules around sustainability claims that businesses can make. It added anti-greenwashing rules to the Competition Act. And essentially, what its purpose was to make sure that businesses weren't making claims about sustainability and their business practices, which were unsubstantiated. And it also created a method or a means for people to file complaints against businesses if their sustainability claims were unsubstantiated. I think the purpose of the bill was to add a layer of credibility, a legal framework, so that when Canadian businesses were making claims about their sustainable business practices, consumers and maybe other economies knew that they were legitimate. But what has actually happened, or what we learned from New Brunswick businesses, was that many SMEs want to talk about sustainability. They want to talk about what they're doing, but they're now worried about getting it wrong or being accused of greenwashing. There's a lot of confusion. In fact, the bill was just amended very recently. Um, there's a lot of it's complicated, there's confusion, and many SMEs are choosing not to say anything about sustainability at all. So for this prototype, we're working with the legal team at KPMG to help translate complex legal language into clear, practical guidance for New Brunswick SMEs. Um, we want to make sure that SMEs in New Brunswick know what they can say, what sort of evidence they need, and how they can communicate those things credibly and confidently. I think the purpose of this bill was to make sure that uh, sustainable claims are again have some authority behind them and offers businesses a competitive advantage and not a constraint. But I think right now, as it stands, New Brunswick businesses feel like it is more of a constraint than an advantage or an opportunity, and we'd like to change that. So we're hosting two sessions. One is going to be online, and one will be in person for SMEs to come and learn about this bill and again, learn what they can say, what evidence they need, and how to communicate sustainability in a way that is not a constraint, but which is an advantage. The next prototype we're calling Export Edge. So despite what the United States may be doing, other markets across the globe are raising expectations around supply chain transparency, about ESG requirements, about measuring and reporting sustainable business practices, their carbon footprints and climate impacts. And this prototype was designed to help businesses in New Brunswick, which are export ready, who are looking at those markets, who are raising those standards, who are looking at those markets and are either finding them too complex or confusing, or who need some sort of mentorship or guidance in order to be as competitive and successful as they can. So here we have identified and are working with three export-ready New Brunswick founders, and we have brought together a group of mentors for each of those businesses. So we're bringing them together for a series of facilitated dinners where the founder, the entrepreneur, the business owner who is export ready but needs some mentorship or guidance can sit down and have an honest, practical conversation with people who know how to do the thing that they're trying to do. So my example for you is here in the Fredericton region. We're working with an indigenous maple syrup producer who has just recently sent her first pallet of maple syrup to Sweden, and we would like to help her export more maple syrup to more European economies, and she's not really sure how to do so. And so we've matched her with uh, two um two people who are senior management of one of New Brunswick's largest agro-food producers. And they are going to help her and support her and guide her to increase her exports to Europe. That's the purpose of this. That's just the one example. We're doing it with other firms as well who have different needs, who have different mentors, but that's the purpose of this prototype. Um, the fifth prototype, one of the clearest things we learned from SMEs during that discovery phase, during the interview phase in particular, was that, and this will come as no surprise, but the biggest barrier to a business who wants to adopt more sustainable business practices, the biggest barrier is cost. It's money. We also heard that accessing funding for, in order to, let's say, decarbonize or increase energy efficiency of a business, funding that sort of ecosystem is confusing and complex. Many SMEs don't have the capacity or the resources, both financial and human, in order to navigate what is a complicated and complex funding ecosystem. We also learned through our close, I won't name drop any departments or agencies, but we've been working very closely with a number of partners across different government departments. And one of the things I've heard time and again is that for those departments or agencies or crown corporations that provide a lot of this sustainability funding, those grants, those loans, those programs, those different departments don't often have the opportunity to come together and talk about, this is what I'll call the sustainability funding ecosystem sort of more broadly. So what this prototype is designed to do is to bring funders together to talk about what the funding, what exists currently within the funding ecosystem, sort of to map what's there, to hopefully identify gaps, to improve coordination, to create an area so that those folks who don't maybe normally get a chance to talk to one another can talk to one another, improve coordination, and hopefully come up with some concrete recommendations to create or move towards a funding ecosystem that is a little bit more transparent, maybe a bit more aligned, and ideally easier for SMEs to navigate. So this is at the end of the day about making it easier for SMEs to access the funding that will help them adopt more sustainable business practices and be more competitive in a rapidly changing global economy. Excuse me. The sixth prototype. So one of the things, of course, we also realized quite quickly is that not every sector in the New Brunswick economy faces the same challenges or requires or needs the same solutions. So generic sort of solutions don't always land. We've been working on a number of projects previously with the CANB, the Construction Association of New Brunswick. We've been working with them on and around the percentage of immigrants in their workforce and raising that. So here for this prototype, we wanted to target a specific sector and help them work as a sector to design a sort of roadmap towards a more sustainable or decarbonized future. And due to the ongoing work we've been doing with the construction sector, we're working with the construction sector again to identify ways in which the sector can not only be more sustainable, but also more competitive. And so the problem that we've identified here is that for our built environment, the things that we build in this province, in particular public builds, so anything funded by the provincial government, follows building codes. We have just adopted the building code, I think, from 2020. The National Building Code 2025 just came out, and New Brunswick will adopt that in the coming years. And there's a real anxiety across the whole sector that builders and tradespeople will not be ready for the higher sustainability building standards that are coming with the National Building Code 2025. So what we're trying to do with this prototype is bring that sector together in order to figure out exactly what the building code will look like. So I have someone from government who's going to be talking about what those requirements look like, to have a candid, open, honest conversation about sustainability across that sector. When we talk about our built environment, it's not just tradespeople, it's also architects and engineers, it's the planners. And so I've also been working with the Architects Association of New Brunswick and the Engineering Association as well in order to bring people from different phases of the building process together to have a candid conversation about sustainability in that sector and what increased sustainability requirements means for the sector, how the sector can meet those requirements such that small and medium-sized construction companies, tradespeople, builders, engineers, architects, those firms can bid and compete on public builds into the future. So we're bringing those folks together to better understand building standards, to connect people who don't often have a chance to talk, to create a space for them to communicate. So tradespeople, engineers, and architects to surface challenges, identify barriers, and align on a path forward. Finally, our last prototype is called Chambers as Sustainability Champions. So as they should, many small and medium-sized enterprises, when they are faced with a challenge, whether it's around adopting more sustainable business practices or not, many of them rightly turn to trusted intermediaries like our wonderful chambers of commerce for support. So we wanted to design and work with and through our chambers of commerce to design regionally tailored information courses on sustainability and on climate resiliency. We know that climate change will affect businesses in different parts of the province in different ways. So it may affect businesses in St. John differently than it will in Fredericton. And so it's important that each of those courses was regionally tailored. We partnered with the Sustainable Innovation Academy to design those courses. They're being currently delivered through the chambers, again, on and around risk and resiliency and climate change. Um, we are leveraging here the existing networks which our chambers of commerce have to build early stage sustainability literacy, to help meet SMEs where they are, and to help SMEs learn about climate resiliency and climate risk in their region. We have a series of in-person sessions happening as well, March 10th, 11th, and 12th, where local businesses can come together to learn about climate risk, to learn about what they can do to mitigate it, to network with one another and their chambers. So if you are a business in New Brunswick and you'd like to participate, I believe the registration, I can't remember if it's live or not, but follow along. And if it's not live, it will be very shortly, likely next week. And we would love to have you participate. Those are the seven prototypes. So let me just say a few things about Green Horizons and what's next. Over the coming months, we are executing each one of these prototypes, and that means also testing them. So we're going to be executing these prototypes and also measuring and evaluating what actually works, what helps SMEs move towards more sustainable business practices, towards a decarbonized future, what will actually encourage SMEs to move in that direction such that New Brunswick can meet its climate targets. We will be iterating, revising these prototypes based on feedback and based on the results. And the goal, of course, is to learn, to adapt, and to create impact. It's not about rigid programs that we have to follow. It's about testing, it's about learning, and it's about adapting. You can follow this journey through our website and through our social media. I think Jasmeet put that in there, but we're posting about it fairly frequently, updating people as different events occur and different prototypes are launched. There's many opportunities for people to be involved. You can sign up through registration links as they are created. And finally, I just wanted to say another thing about how people can maybe be involved. The purpose of this is not it's not a closed program. It's a platform for for collaboration. I think if we want New Brunswick businesses to compete globally and to adapt locally and to thrive, we need to do so together. One of the things I think everybody here will have heard this probably a million times. What is what is New Brunswick's competitive advantage? We're always talking about it. It's that we're small, and so it's really easy to work together. Of all provinces, New Brunswick is best situated to really work in a collaborative, interdisciplinary, cross-sectoral manner. We say it all the time. I think in practice, it maybe doesn't happen as well or as often as we want. And so if you are interested in working with or on this project, uh, please reach out. There will be an opportunity for you to ask me and the team any questions you might have. Of course, we'll do that in a minute. But if you have any ideas, any thoughts beyond that, I'm always available via email or via phone call. I would love to hear from you. And here is my contact information. Thank you all again so much for being here.